They mocked humanity's weak world, until they learned what grows there. The chamber felt like a cold starship hangar. High ceiling, pale light, no echo, only careful breath. Kether of the Voss stood on the witness dais. Broad, silver-scaled, hands steady, even when his hearts were not. He wore the simple band of a neutral volunteer. A porter, a driver, a helper in bad places. Across from him sat Magistrate Ilian of the Umbral, tall even while seated, skin the color of deep space. From his crown, thin light filaments drifted and twitched whenever he thought. When they stilled, the room seemed to freeze with them. Witness Kether, Ilian said, voice calm and heavy. You will recount the events on Mira 3. The matter concerns the Pact of Saren. 500 years of peace. His filaments tightened like drawn wire. Do you understand? Kether's inner lids flickered. He knew the law promised safety to neutral witnesses. He also knew law could bend when power pushed. He nodded once. To his right, the human delegation sat in a neat line. Slate suits, still shoulders, hard eyes. No one spoke. No one even shifted in the chair. They looked like a cliff before a storm. To his left, the Dravek envoys glowed with polish. Old tusks, groomed fur, collars bright with rank stones. One squeezed a datapad so hard the shell creaked. Their small eyes moved from the judge to Kether and back, wet with anger. Magistrate Ilian lowered his gaze. Tell this court how the peace cracked. Kether drew air slowly. He let the memory climb up. Dawn in the prefab camp. Thin heat already lifting from the grit. Machines humming. 20 humans. 12 Voss. Different tents. One purpose. Neutral aid. He remembered the smell of human coffee. Sharp. Warm. He remembered Dr. Lynn Mara, a human medic with quick hands and a soft voice. She had laughed about sleeping on a crate. She had passed cups to anyone who could drink the stuff without shaking. The call came from Hesh Village Keeler. Night bombing. Homes crushed. Many wounded. Civilians. Old ones. Children. The request was clear. Any help, any water, any bandage. They loaded in silence. Boxes passed in a human chain from hands to truck bed. Kether liked that system. It made heavy work light and quick. Gauze. Burn gel. Field sutures. Multi-species antibiotics. Rations stamped safe for Hesh bodies. 6 trucks. Big suspensions for broken ground. Radio chatter snapped at their ears as they rolled out. 2 bands. 2 tongues. Dravek orders. Hesh please. Overlapping. Hot with fear. The road cut through pale ridges and loose sand that slid under tires like water. John Ald, the young human driver, kept the wheel calm. He had run this path many times. He knew where the ruts hid. Smoke showed long before the village. Not gray cook smoke. Black columns. Thick as tree trunks. As they crested the last rise, the smell changed. Not only burn. Something chemical. Wrong. It bit the nose and did not leave. Keeler was broken. Roofs torn. Walls melted where stone should never melt. A child's toy fused to a step. Kether stepped down and felt the ground shift under ash. He forced his voice low and steady over the radio. Triage grid. East to west. Minor to severe. Move. Work began. Human medics ran in pairs. Voss volunteers spread out with water and shelter cloth. They lifted slabs. They braced beams. They pressed wounds and told the living to keep breathing. Kether carried canisters and comfort. He did not let his hands shake. Then the world drew a single straight line. It lasted only a heartbeat. A thin red thread across dust and smoke. A coil laser. You never see a beam unless the air is full of fine death. Keeler's air was full of it. The line went from shadow to white and stopped in a human back. Kether turned and ran. Others ran too. He heard John curse once, like a cut. They climbed over a half-collapsed wall and found Dr. Lynn Mara on the ground. Face down. White medic coat, seared black along the spine. The burn went clean through. It had been a steady shot. Long range. No panic in it. Under her body, the Hesh girl still breathed. Small. Fur matted with ash and blood that was not her own. Dr. Lynn had seen the shot coming and had used her body as a shield. The parents lay near. They had not been spared. The beam had taken them first. Then it had taken the medic. No one spoke for a long time. The only sound was the child's thin sobs and the hiss of a cracked pipe. Work resumed because it must. The living called. The dead could wait. They moved the girl. They covered Dr. Lynn's face. They kept going until the stretchers were full and the light went soft. They returned to camp at dusk. No one cooked. No one joked. The coffee pot sat cold. John stared at his hands. Others stared at the floor. The look in their eyes had changed. Not louder. Not wilder. Harder. Like glass cooled and tempered. At dawn, engines woke the sand. New trucks. Heavier. Not medical crates this time. Armor plates. Sealed cases. Rifles nested in foam. Drone wings folded like knives. Kether found Victor Hale, Human Logistics. What is this? Victor's eyes were tired stone. We tried to be only medics, he said. A healer was marked and shot while shielding a child. That is a line. We will make sure no one steps over it again. Kether spoke of neutrality. Of the pact. Of 500 quiet years. Victor did not argue. He only walked away. The air felt thinner when he left. Outside, the sky was very clear. Too clear for what was coming. The next day began without dawn. The sky over Mira 3 was still tinted with the ash of Keeler. Kether sat by the truck, hands locked around a half-empty canteen, eyes fixed on nothing. He had not slept. None of them had. The camp was too quiet. The humans moved like machines wound too tight. No chatter. No jokes. No coffee this morning. Dr. Lynn's bedroll was still laid out inside the barracks, untouched. Someone had folded her coat and placed her ID tag on top. It looked wrong there. Too small, too human, too final. Kether felt the weight of it press against the air. He had seen soldiers grieve before. But this was different. This was colder, sharper. It was the silence before lightning. When the sound came, it was low and steady. Engines, big ones. Kether stepped outside. 3 new transports rolled through the dust, heavier than the medical trucks. Their sides bore no insignia. Their tires sank deep in the sand. Humans stepped down, not in med-blue uniforms, but in dull gray. Boxes were unloaded, metal, locked, and sealed with hazard stamps. Armor plating, power cells, ammunition crates. Kether felt his throat dry. We are supposed to be neutral, he said to no one. Victor Hale, the logistics officer, was directing the offload. His face was drawn but calm. Neutrality ends, he said quietly, when someone shoots the medic who's saving a child. Kether followed him to the edge of the camp. You can't do this, he pressed. The Pact of Saren forbids it. The Council will see this as war. Victor met his eyes. Then let them see. Maybe they'll remember what happens when they make us bury healers. He walked away before Kether could reply. All morning, the sound of metal clinking replaced the usual voices. The smell of gun oil replaced coffee. The humans worked with silent purpose, checking rifles, fitting armor, stacking drone pods. None of them looked angry. None of them looked sad. They looked decided. Kether helped carry crates anyway. Habit. He was Voss, built to help, not to fight. But each time he lifted a box, he felt the tension inside it, the way it hummed faintly, as if waiting for command. By noon, the air trembled. Sonic booms rolled over the desert like distant thunder. Kether looked up and saw white streaks slicing through the clouds, fast movers. He knew them from reports only. Human strike craft, silent and precise. He had never seen them in motion. Within minutes, the radio filled with overlapping voices. Dravek frequencies screamed confusion. Unknown units in orbit. Unauthorized entry. All batteries. Then static. The humans didn't cheer. They just listened. Another voice came through, a woman's, calm and cold. Guardian protocol active. Civilian zones confirmed. Engage only marked Dravek positions. Kether turned to Victor. Guardian protocol? Victor nodded once. It means we stop being prey. The first detonations came from beyond the ridge. Not the wide, random thunder of Dravek bombardments. These were precise. Each impact followed another exactly 1 minute apart. In less than an hour, the Dravek air bases went dark. The static on their frequency turned into silence. The desert smelled of heat and ozone. Kether stood at the camp gate, watching contrails cross the sky like white scars. He whispered, not sure to whom, "This is not war. This is judgment." That night, they sat again around cold food. No fire, no talk. The humans ate without looking at each other. One of them finally broke the quiet. A young pilot, eyes rimmed red. "She died saving their child," he said. "We saved hundreds of theirs. They shot her anyway. Now we save everyone by ending it." No one argued. Kether looked at the stars above Mira 3. They flickered faintly through the haze, distant and bright. He wondered if the galaxy would understand what had just begun, because something inside the humans had shifted. They were no longer healers under the banner of neutrality. They were a species that had remembered what it meant to defend one of their own. And before the next dawn rose, the sky itself would answer them. The night after the bombing passed without rest. The horizon of Mira, 3 glowed faintly red, not from sunrise but from burning wrecks far away. The wind carried the scent of scorched metal, a reminder that the rules of peace were now only words. Kether woke to a rhythm that wasn't natural, a steady metallic clank, boots on metal plates, tools striking armor. When he stepped outside, the camp no longer looked like a field hospital. It looked like a fortress being born. Humans moved in silent purpose, their faces set, their eyes colder than desert glass. The old medical banners had been taken down. In their place stood rows of stacked supply crates and open weapons racks. Drones hovered like steel hawks above the ground, their red sensors blinking in unison. Kether found Victor Hale near the trucks, checking coordinates on a wrist console. "What are you doing?" Kether asked. His voice cracked more than he wanted it to. Victor didn't look up. "Preparing the Guardian Radius." Kether frowned. "What is that?" "It's what happens," Victor said, "when a human dies doing the right thing." Before Kether could reply, a new sound filled the sky, deep, rolling, almost like thunder. But it was no storm. Shadows crossed the desert floor. He looked up and saw them, ships, sleek and dark, breaking through the cloud cover in perfect formation. They didn't bear war paint or emblems, only a faint blue glow along their hulls. They moved with purpose, silent and terrifying. Kether had read about them in archived military briefs, human rapid response carriers, part of their secret protection doctrine. A safeguard no one in the galaxy officially believed existed. The humans called it Guardian Radius, the invisible shield around their own, waiting quietly beyond orbit, always ready to fall like a hammer. The first sonic boom shattered the quiet. Sand rippled outward. Then came the second, closer. The humans didn't cheer. They only checked their watches, as if confirming an appointment. Victor turned toward Kether and said softly, "They heard what happened to Dr. Lin. They're here to make sure it never happens again." Kether felt the ground tremble under his feet as more ships descended beyond the horizon. The air shimmered, thick with static. Within an hour, the radio erupted into chaos. Dravec transmissions overlapped in panic. Unidentified crafts. They bypassed orbital defense. "Command is gone. Signal cut." Kether listened, frozen. Humanity had not even declared war. They had simply arrived. The next transmission came in a calm female voice. "This is Guardian Command. All medical personnel remain in designated safe zones. All Dravec combatants stand down. Civilian safety will be enforced by force." And then the bombing began, not wild and random like the Dravec attacks. Each strike hit with surgical accuracy. A power station, a command relay, a weapons depot. One by one, the Dravec's ability to fight was peeled away. The sky flashed in measured intervals. No screams, no wasted fire. Just efficiency. By midday, Mira 3 sky was full of contrails and smoke rings that drifted like scars. Kether walked through the camp, watching humans reload drones, transmit coordinates, hand tools with mechanical precision. He realized something chilling. This wasn't revenge. It was correction. "Will they stop?" he asked Victor. "When it's safe to send medics again," Victor said. His tone was calm, almost gentle. The Dravec frequencies turned to static. No orders. No movement. Only silence. That evening, Kether stood outside the barracks. Above him, human fighters formed slow, sweeping arcs, like silent birds circling over a wounded world. The fires on the horizon burned lower now, blue in the dark. For the first time, Kether understood what other species whispered about humanity, that they were not the strongest because of size or weapons, but because once they decided a thing was sacred, they defended it to the end. He watched the sky one last time before returning inside. The stars of Mira, 3 shimmered faintly through the haze, as if the universe itself was watching the humans draw their circle of protection around the wounded planet, a radius no one would dare to cross again. The next sunrise over Mira, 3 felt unreal. The desert still smoked, but no bombs fell, no engines screamed across the horizon. For the first time in months, the wind carried nothing but dust. Kether stood outside the barracks, blinking against the glare. It was quiet, too quiet. The human camp that had once been filled with the smell of antiseptic and coffee now smelled of ozone and heated metal. The medics were gone, replaced by soldiers wearing gray tactical suits with pale blue visors. They moved with discipline, each motion timed like a heartbeat. Kether climbed onto the back of a transport to look beyond the dunes. The human dropships had landed overnight. Sleek, dark silhouettes rested half-buried in sand, their engines still glowing faintly. Drones rose and fell like sparks, scanning, relaying, calculating. He could feel the hum of coordination, the sound of a machine made from many hearts beating together. By mid-morning, reports began filtering through the radio. The Dravek front lines had gone silent. Their artillery posts were cold, power grids offline, command centers evacuated. Human strike craft had not destroyed cities or homes. They had simply removed the Dravek's ability to fight. It was a clean kind of devastation, the kind that leaves nothing to rebuild from. Kether sat near the transmitter, listening to the fragments of intercepted chatter. Supply convoys gone. No reinforcements. Retreat to orbit. Repeat, retreat to orbit. Each message came from farther and farther away, until the only thing left on the Dravek frequency was static. When the first Dravek platoon surrendered, no shots were fired. They marched out from a shattered outpost, carrying white banners made from torn uniforms. Kether watched them approach through the heat haze, small figures under the glare of a merciless sun. The humans didn't shout, didn't gloat. They simply ordered them to drop weapons and sit. Medics, real medics this time, were already tending to the wounded. It was over before anyone realized the war had truly ended. By noon, the surrender reports came in waves. Dravek units all across the southern hemisphere had laid down arms. Entire divisions radioed in, requesting evacuation or mercy. Kether had never seen such efficiency. Humanity hadn't needed weeks of fighting. They had needed less than a single day. He remembered what Victor Hale had said. "We'll make sure no one steps over that line again." Now he understood what those words meant. Humanity hadn't come to win territory or claim resources. They had come to send a message that would echo across the galaxy. Kether joined a convoy driving through the ruins of Keeler that evening. The village was unrecognizable, but something strange had begun to happen there. Hesh civilians had started rebuilding already, patching walls, lighting small fires for warmth. When human troops arrived, no one ran. The children approached first, tiny shapes with wide eyes. They offered the soldiers flowers made from burned fabric and wire. A soldier bent down, took one, and placed it gently on the sand beside a small memorial stone. On that stone, someone had carved words in both languages. "She saved a child. We saved her promise." Kether stood there, throat tight. Around him, the sunset painted the desert gold, and for the first time, he saw the humans not as conquerors, but as guardians who had drawn a circle of fire around compassion itself. That night, as the temperature dropped and the stars returned, Kether sat by the supply truck and watched the sky. Human fighter craft moved in slow arcs, keeping silent watch over the land they had just saved. They didn't celebrate. They didn't rest. They simply guarded. The Dravek war machines were broken, their fleets retreating beyond Mira 3's orbit. The Hesh were free again, and in the stillness that followed, Kether realized something profound. The humans hadn't fought a war. They had ended one. And in that ending, the galaxy would find its newest fear, the quiet kind of justice that only humans delivered. The hearing chamber on the galactic citadel was vast enough to swallow echoes. Every word inside it weighed more than metal, and every breath felt like a weapon waiting to be used. Kether of the Voss stood once again at the witness dais, the cold platform humming beneath his feet. The events of Mira 3 were no longer smoke and screams. They were politics now, reshaped, reworded, and sharpened into arguments by those who hadn't seen the blood. Across the polished floor sat the Dravek delegation. Their fur was slicked to a shine, their collars heavy with authority stones. They looked more like merchants than warriors now. At their head, Envoy Korthval stood, tusks gleaming beneath the chamber lights. His voice was steady, but each word trembled with outrage. "Your Honor," he said, turning to Magistrate Ilian, "we submit that humanity acted as an aggressor. They interfered in a lawful colonial dispute. They annihilated our fleets. They ruined our future settlements. This was not justice. It was domination. Kether watched the humans across the aisle. 5 of them sat in quiet formation, their uniforms simple, gray-blue, and unadorned. No expression, no flicker of emotion. Only stillness, the kind that makes other species nervous. Ambassador Reyes, the leader of the human delegation, didn't even raise her head. She simply tapped a finger once on the table, a sound like a heartbeat cutting through silence. Magistrate Ilian's luminous filaments rippled in irritation. Envoy Korth, your grievances will be heard. But we will begin with witness testimony. His eyes, dark and deep as orbit, shifted to Kether. Proceed. Kether swallowed once. His reflection stared back at him from the chamber floor, silver-scaled, tired, and unwillingly remembered. I was there, he began softly, voice steady. I saw the aftermath of the Dravek bombardment. I saw Dr. Lynn Mara die protecting a Hesh child. And I saw the laser that killed her. A clean shot, fired from distance, aimed directly at a medic marked as neutral. Murmurs rippled through the chamber. The Dravek delegation bristled, for standing like storm grass. Korth Val pounded his fist. Lies. Fabrications. There is no proof. Magistrate Ilian raised one hand. His voice did not rise, but it cut sharper than any shout. Envoy, you will sit down, or I will have you removed from these proceedings. Korth froze. His nostrils flared, but he obeyed. Kether continued, his voice calm, stripped of emotion. The Dravek forces didn't hit a target by mistake. They hit her because she was human, because she was helping the enemy's children. And that decision, he said, pausing just long enough for every eye to lift, cost your people everything. The silence afterward was suffocating. Even the translation drones seemed to hesitate before rendering the words into other tongues. Ambassador Reyes finally looked up. Her gaze met Kether's for a second, a brief nod, almost imperceptible. Then she turned toward the magistrate. With respect, Your Honor, she said, her voice measured and cool. Our people did not go to Mira, 3 seeking war. We want to stop 1. When the Dravek chose to kill an unarmed medic, they declared the terms of engagement themselves. Humanity only answered. Her words didn't shout. They didn't need to. They landed like quiet thunder. The Dravek envoy shot to his feet again, face flushed beneath his fur. They're turning themselves into arbiters of the galaxy. They cannot choose who fights and who dies. This time, Ilian didn't even look up. The light filaments around his head twisted sharply, the umbral gesture for warning. Sit down, Envoy Korth. You are standing in front of the same law that your people broke. The room chilled. Kether felt the weight of every eye. The truth had finally found its voice, but in this chamber, truth was only another blade. He spoke one last time, quiet but clear. When you kill a healer, he said, you do not start a war, you finish peace. Magistrate Ilian sat still for a long moment. His filaments flickered once, twice, then went perfectly still. The silence stretched until even the air seemed to wait. Finally, he said, this court will recess for deliberation. The lights dimmed, and Kether exhaled slowly, his hands trembling at last. He looked at the humans, calm, still, carved from stone, and realized that no matter what verdict the council delivered, something deeper had already been decided. The chamber reconvened under colder light. The banners of the Galactic Council hung motionless, and the hush that filled the hall was heavier than gravity. Every species representative leaned forward slightly, waiting to see how far the humans would be punished, or how far they would be feared. Kether stood at his place once more. The events of Mira, 3 replayed behind his eyes. The red beam, the medic's fall, the sky full of thunder. Now those moments were being translated into law, into numbers, into something that could never carry the same weight as what he had seen. Magistrate Ilian sat high upon the dais, his form shadowed in deep violet light. The filaments across his head glowed faintly, each one swaying in silent rhythm. When he finally spoke, his voice carried across the chamber like the edge of a blade drawn from its sheath. This court, he began, has heard the testimony of witness Kether of the Voss. It has reviewed recordings, transmission fragments, and the verified timeline of events on Mira 3. The facts are clear. He paused, the silence deliberate. The Dravek initiated hostilities against the Hesh population on Mira 3, employing munitions forbidden by galactic convention. A marked human medic, Dr. Lin Mara, was deliberately targeted and killed while attempting to protect civilian life. Humanity's subsequent response, swift, overwhelming, and precise, ended the conflict in less than 24 standard hours. Gasps rippled through the delegates' gallery. Ilian's tone did not change. However, he continued, this action also represents a direct violation of the Pact of Terran. Humanity intervened militarily in a war not their own, within a neutral sector, without authorization. Envoy Korthval of the Dravek seized on the words. His fur bristled, his voice rising in desperate triumph. At last, they admit their guilt. Humanity must face full sanction, loss of council rights, weapons restrictions, reparations. Enough. The single word from Ilian stopped him cold. The judge leaned forward, and for the first time since the hearing began, his filaments turned a deep crimson glow, the color of judgment among the umbral. You asked for justice, Envoy, Ilian said. Then let us name it clearly. He turned his gaze toward the humans. Humanity violated the treaty. That cannot be ignored. Then he turned back to the Dravek. But you, Envoy, asked for punishment without admitting your own crime. You deliberately killed a healer protected by every code of war since the founding of this council. You killed mercy itself. That cannot be forgiven. The Dravek delegation froze. Korthval opened his mouth, then closed it again when he saw the light of the judge's filaments deepen. Ilian's voice grew quieter, but each word fell like stone. The Dravek speak of law, yet they struck first, using weapons designed to burn cities instead of win battles. They broke the very foundation of neutrality, the safety of those who heal. Humanity's response was not conquest. It was correction. He gestured toward the human delegation. Still, the law must have form. The court rules that humanity shall pay a fine of 2 million credits for breach of the Pact of Terran. A stunned silence followed. It was a symbolic amount, barely the cost of a single strike craft. Then the hall erupted. Dravek delegates shouted in outrage, pounding their claws against the table. Korthval's voice rose above the rest, high and trembling with fury. 2 million credits? That is nothing. They destroyed fleets, outposts, entire colonies. Magistrate Ilian's filaments snapped outward like lightning bolts. Sit down, Envoy Val, he thundered, or I will open a full tribunal on your species' use of incendiary weapons against civilians. Shall we see how that ends? The words hit harder than any missile. The Dravek delegation fell silent. Even their translator drone dimmed its light, as if afraid to speak. Across the aisle, Ambassador Reyes of Earth inclined her head in quiet acknowledgement. No triumph, no smile, only calm understanding. Kether realized then that the humans had never cared about the fine. This was never about money or treaties. It was about principle, about warning. Magistrate Ilian's tone softened slightly. Let this ruling stand as both punishment and lesson. The peace of 5 centuries has been bent, but not broken. May it remind us all what happens when compassion becomes a casualty. He struck the gavel once. The sound echoed through the hall like a final heartbeat. As the delegates dispersed, Korthval sat frozen, staring at the floor. The humans stood as one, collecting their files with silent precision. They bowed to the judge and turned to leave. Kether followed their movement, feeling something strange, admiration and fear, side by side. Humanity had lost nothing today. If anything, they had shown the galaxy that their anger was as disciplined as their mercy. The great chamber of the Galactic Council emptied slowly, like a battlefield after the smoke clears. Delegates whispered in low tones, trading rumors and unease. None of them would admit it out loud, but everyone in that hall had witnessed something far larger than a trial. Kether stood alone near the back wall, his scaled hands folded tight. The cold floor beneath him hummed with the echo of the verdict. 2 million credits, a fine so small it bordered on mockery. Yet the Dravek delegation had looked as if they'd been sentenced to extinction. He understood why. It wasn't about the money. It was about what the galaxy had just learned. Magistrate Ilian's gavel strike still lingered in the air, sharp and final. His closing words replayed in Kether's mind like an old broadcast. When mercy is murdered, the law remembers. Now everyone in that chamber knew what those words meant. The Dravek envoys huddled together, their composure shattered. Envoy Korthval's fur stood on end, his voice a low growl. "We cannot let this stand," he muttered to his aides. "They made us look weak. They made us fear them." One of his aides whispered back, "Perhaps it is wise to fear them, envoy." Kether watched the humans rise. No cheers, no boasts, just calm, measured movements. Ambassador Reyes gathered her documents, nodded once toward the magistrate, and turned toward the exit. The other humans followed her in silent formation, as if the verdict had been decided long before they entered the chamber. Kether hesitated before stepping down from the dais. His every motion felt heavy, pulled by a truth he could no longer ignore. The humans had changed something today, not only for themselves, but for everyone. He caught up to them in the corridor. The walls glowed with soft blue light, reflecting on the polished armor of the human guards stationed outside. The place smelled of ozone and steel, the scent of controlled power. Ambassador Reyes noticed him and stopped. For a moment, her diplomatic calm slipped. Behind it, Kether saw grief. Grief not just for Dr. Lynn Mara, but for what her death had forced her people to become again. "She saved a child," Kether said quietly, "and her death changed everything." Reyes nodded slowly. "It reminded us who we are," she said. "We made peace with the galaxy 5 centuries ago. But peace only works when everyone believes mercy has no price." The Dravek forgot. We reminded them. Kether tilted his head, voice barely above a whisper. "And the others?" Her eyes softened, though her voice remained steady. "The others will remember, too. The galaxy now knows. If you draw blood from a healer, humanity will answer. Not with hatred, with precision. With justice." She extended her hand, the human gesture of farewell. Kether accepted it, his clawed fingers closing carefully around hers. Her grip was warm, steady, alive. Then she and her delegation turned the corner and were gone, footsteps fading into the endless hum of the citadel. Kether remained in the corridor for a long time. Outside the great glass dome, the stars wheeled slowly in the void, cold, ancient, and watchful. Somewhere among them, Mira, 3 circled its sun, rebuilt and breathing again under human protection. He thought of Dr. Lynn Mara, of her body shielding a child no one would remember by name. He thought of the beam that ended 5 centuries of peace, and how, from that one act of cruelty, an entire civilization had been reminded of its boundaries. The Dravek would pay their fine. Humanity would return home. The galaxy would pretend things had settled. But deep down, every species that had witnessed this hearing would remember the unspoken verdict, the one never written into law. Never target a human medic. Never touch those who heal. Because when you do, peace doesn't break, it burns. Kether turned toward the exit, his reflection glinting in the corridor's metallic light. The council could measure consequences in credits and treaties, but the real cost was far greater, a warning now etched into history and whispered across the stars.